Well, thank you, brother. It's good to see everyone here. Can you hear me in the back? Okay. 10 years ago, a little over 10 years ago, I was confronted with the fact that I was born with a genetic predisposition to getting a whole range of cancers. It was called Lynch-Muir-Torrey syndrome, and I inherited it from my father. But up until that time, I hadn't had any significant cancers. But a little over 10 years ago, I began to enter this decade where my life has been filled with cancer after cancer after cancer after cancer. I've had 21 surgeries in 10 years. I've had 3 rounds of radiation. I've had 2 different kinds of chemo, 2 different kinds of infusion treatments. I've been stuck more than a piñata, and I've thought of myself, sad to say, as a medical patient. You want my identity? I'm a medical patient. That's who I am. Am I a Christian fundamentally? No. I'm a medical patient fundamentally. That's the way I felt. So I had, in the last 4 years at UCI School of Medicine, I had 6 surgeries in my cheek. Right now I had been fighting bladder cancer and cancer throughout my cheek area, and there were 6 surgeries done to get rid of it because it went from my lower part of my eye to my jaw and from the inside of my nostril over to my ear. It was all over my cheek, and it was deep. One of the surgeries, I had to have a bandage cover it for 6 or 7 months because if I took the bandage off, I could see my bones because they had gone down and cut out some of my cheekbone and biopsied it. And so my whole cheek area was filled with cancer, and it would keep coming back, and they would do a surgery, and then it would come back. And last May or June, my surgeon, Dr. Tao, who's a brother in the Lord, by the way, he said, JP, I don't know how to tell you this, but we're going to have to stop these surgeries. And I said, okay, why is that? He said, every time we do a surgery, when there's an area of cancer we can see and we cut it out, it grows back more quickly every time. And so what we've got now is a situation of diminishing returns. If we do another surgery, it's going to come back faster. And so we have to stop doing the surgeries. And I knew that this could eventually be life-threatening. This wasn't just a skin cancer. It was much deeper than that. So I said, well, what do you recommend, sir? And he said, well, I think the next step would be to try to get radiation. And so I went to a radiation oncologist, and I had, from early July through August, I had 40 treatments of radiation. It gave me sores in my mouth, and my sinuses were damaged, and but I just didn't know what had happened through the radiation. Before I started the treatment, the oncologist said, listen, I'm going to be honest with you about this, okay? Your problem is pretty unique from what I've seen. It's so deep and pervasive that radiation is not going to get all of it. My hope for my objective for your radiation treatments is to buy you another year or 2 of life. Because if you don't do anything or the radiation doesn't work, I would give you a year, maybe 2 years to live. And if we do the radiation and it helps, then that could bump that down to maybe 3 years, 4 years, if it does a really good job. But I want to be honest with you, this will eventually take your life. And I started getting my affairs in order, and my wife and my 2 married daughters and 5 grandchildren, we had to tell them to about the situation, and it was a hard time for them especially, and for me. And I had to wrestle during this last summer with not being afraid to die. And I had been reading a book on the parables of Jesus, and this is worth, I think, sharing, that one night in bed, I was praying, as I always do, and I was just, praying again, Lord, I'm really not afraid to die any longer, which I wasn't, and I'm not. And I said, but I think that I've got work to do, and my family still needs me for a while, so I would like for you to give me some time to finish my work. And then something hit me, and I don't know if it was the Lord or just my recollection of a book on the parables I'd been reading, but in there, if you look at Jesus' parables, there are two fundamental things that make God pleased more than anything else that we do. And the first one is that you are consumed and preoccupied with being a disciple of Jesus. That's your daily preoccupation, and along with that, you are captivated and passionate about and completely dedicated to learning how to live in the kingdom of God according to its nature and its principles and its values. And it dawned on me, discipleship isn't my main thing in life, and living in God's kingdom is not the main thing in my life. Getting well is the main thing in my life. And I just felt a deep sense of grief about that. And I released my health. And I said, I want whatever time I've got, I want to be your disciple. I want to live in your kingdom more fully. And I want to finish well as your disciple and kingdom liver. Now, there was nothing wrong with me wanting to get well. That's normal, but I was preoccupied with it. Do you see the difference? So if you're sick, it's perfectly fine for you to want to get well, but you don't want to be preoccupied and ruminating on it all the time like I was, because it takes you away from your fundamental commitment of wanting to finish well. So I had an MRI and a PET CT scan, I don't know, a few weeks ago or so. And Ken Fish was here last Sunday, and I was going to meet with my radiation oncologist on Wednesday to get the results of the scan. I had also had an appointment with my ophthalmologist who did surgery on my eye. I don't have cancer in my eye, but my eyelid had been continuing to droop down, and so you can see the bottom of my eyeball, and I've had several surgeries and for that. Okay, so lo and behold, Monday morning after Ken was here, both of the scans were posted on my portal. So I looked at them and couldn't read them because the medical language was not something I understood. I have a former student who did an MA in philosophy under me and then went to Ohio State for his MD degree and has now been on in the Department of Oncology at the University of North Carolina School of Medicine. He's a good buddy, and every time I have a scan, I send it to him and said, read this sucker, will you? I mean, I don't know. So he sent it back, and he said, JP, I'm not seeing anything of concern on either of these scans. And one of them was a full body scan, and he said, your eye is still pretty puffy, but I'm not seeing, I don't see anything on these scans of any concern. Okay, all right. So yeah, but I wasn't convinced. You clap. We clap too soon. And we really do, because we tend. Well, I won't get into that. But you people are too gullible about miracles, and some people are too skeptical. And where you want to be is wise. Okay, so I still was not convinced by that one reading that after having cancer for 10 years, I was well. So the next day, Tuesday, I went to see my ophthalmological surgeon, And I showed him the reports, and he said, JP, there's no cancer in you. I'm not seeing it. And he brought the scan up on his laptop, and then a scan I had done 6 or 8 years ago, and he said, look at this. Now it's been cleared out, and there's nothing in there. And he said, I'm just not seeing it. And then Wednesday, I went to my radiation oncologist who had ordered these tests, and he walks in and he says, well, I got to tell you, I had told you that, our goal was to maybe give you another year or two. And he said, there is nothing of concern about these tests. You shouldn't be concerned about anything. I said, what do you mean? He said, these scans are not showing any cancer anywhere. And I just about fell off the chair. And now you can clap. All right. See, we got 3 witnesses to it. Okay, but what happened was there have been people all over the world praying for me for a long time. But when Ken Fish was here, something special happened. And I went over, and he was gracious enough to put his hands on me. He tried to put his hands on my wallet, but I didn't let that happen. But he put his hands on me, and yes, it was true. And he prayed about 10, 15 minutes, and I just bowed my head, and he just spoke to the cancer and called upon Jesus to have mercy, and what he did in the sermon was just outstanding. That as God is a covenant maker with us, he fundamentally identifies himself as a healer. Holy cow. Which means that he really does want to heal. And I had that conviction at a new level. And he prayed over me, and I felt a warm presence. I could feel the presence of God over me. But nothing happened, but that I knew of. But when I left and found out these 3 scans and these 3 doctors evaluating 2 scans, and that I had no cancer, I've never had a scan in 10 years where there was no cancer. And I've had scans like, you don't want to know how many I've had. So I can only conclude that God used people who have endured in praying, and then as a capstone, this body and Ken Fish to pray against my cancer, and for God to go beyond what the medicine was expected to do. And that was good to have, but it went beyond that, as the doctor himself admitted. And I've witnessed all these guys. And at this stage, I don't have any cancer, and it's crazy. Now, I want to say one other thing here, and then I'll sit down. So we poked around, and we came here because Mark and Downton Abbey Stevens are come here. And the reason that Hope and I have felt at home is that we were 60s Jesus people. We got saved in the 60s. We were radicalized through Campus Crusade, and we were radical, and we still are. Only the poor people up at Vaughn's, when Hope comes, they all start diving for because she shares with just about everybody in there. And I look here, and the music that's played make me worship, and it's music of the old sort, and I don't care the date, but I'm just telling you, I love that music, and it draws me toward Jesus. I've loved the teaching and the messages, but you are my kind of people, and I don't mean this in a harsh way by any means. But I was raised in a blue-collar family, and I'm an academic. I spent my life in the academy, but I don't particularly care to hang out with academics. I like to hang out. My wife and I like to hang with the ordinary people who have problems, and who use poor grammar, and all the rest of it. Just kidding. But you're our kinds of people. I don't know what else to tell you. We feel comfortable with you. And so we're honored to be here, and I want to thank Dave for giving me time to just share my story. Thank you, my brother.
Thank you, JP. Thank you. Thank you.